What's going on, everyone? Welcome to the newest episode of the Bleav in Oregon podcast. We are trying something new today. As you can see, I'm Zachary Neel. That is not my co-host, Jonathan Stewart, over there. It is none other than the great, the legendary Jerry Allen. Good morning, Jerry. How are you?
Good morning, Zach. I'm not nearly as fast or as powerful as Jonathan is. So
I don't think many of us are, honestly.
No, I don't think
if that's
so.
how we're measuring ourselves with Jay Stu, he's going to win that battle most of the time.
Every time, yeah.
Yeah, so I thank you for coming on with me today. Jay Stu and I will talk more about our scheduling on Tuesday, but for now, I'm thrilled to be joined by the voice of the Ducks after an entertaining 31-10 win over Michigan State on Friday night. Just a quick recap of the game. Oregon's defense was completely dominant. 5 sacks, a shutout until late in the game. Jordan James was electric. He had a career-high 166 rushing yards, 151 of those in the first half. Dylan Gabriel was uncharacteristically kind of shaky on a couple of spots in the first half. 2 red zone interceptions. We will talk more about that in a bit. Jerry, I want to ask you to start, though. What was your main takeaway after leaving Autzen Stadium late last night? What was kind of your first initial thought of this game?
Well, my main takeaway was that Oregon was playing maybe the best team they played so far this year. The Boise State was a pretty good ball club, but I thought that Michigan State's defense coming in was really pretty good and been the strength of their team. Their offense has struggled, but I'd look for Oregon each week from that first game to improve. A little bit here, a little bit next week. Get the Oregon State game, you feel a little better, play a great half and an okay half. UCLA, really good half defensively, pretty good defensively. The offense didn't do as well in the second half, but maybe by design. But I'm seeing this team get better each week. And I hope that's what I'm seeing, because that's the ideal. What you want as you go through a Big Ten season, to be the best you are at the end of the season.
Yeah, I think that's really fair. And in particular, the defensive side of this team it's so impressive what we're seeing right now. My general feeling after last night was that it may be time for a lot of us, fans and people who cover the team and just watch this team, to start changing our perspective of what this team is. I have a feeling this is kind of the Dan Lanning version of this team that we thought would be coming when he got hired in 2021. Obviously, we knew that, he got hired because of his defensive excellence and to go along with his recruiting prowess. But despite that, the offense kind of still stole the show in the first 2 years under Bo Nix. But this year, I think we might be in a transition phase where it's like, all right, this may be Oregon football going forward. This may be a team that wins 35-7 instead of 56-17 each week, whatever you want to call it. So that's just, I'm still kind of figuring out my opinion on that. But I think we're in a position where Oregon fans, it may feel different and they may feel a little bit confused. I know a lot of fans were frustrated last night when in the first half you weren't scoring when you got into the red zone, but Oregon still won in dominant fashion. And this defense, I think that may be the calling card for this team going forward. I don't think that's a bad thing either.
No, I think your defense is critical in that if you make mistakes in a ball game like Oregon did with a couple of interceptions deep in the red zone, your defense keeps you not only in the game but ahead of the game. If you don't have a defense that can do that, you give it up and a team gets another opportunity with the ball to score. If your defense can't stop them, then all of a sudden you got this 7-7, 14-7, 14-14, 21-14, and it's a tied ball game. And Oregon's defense in each of those scenarios where the ball was turned over were able to tighten up and hold Michigan State down. So I don't want to say no damage done. Anytime you turn the ball over, that's damage. But Oregon's defense limit that damage.
Well, and because of that defense, we went into the half up 21-0, and that felt like a absolutely insurmountable lead, because there was just nothing that Michigan State had shown in the first 2 quarters that gave you any sort of concern as an Oregon fan watching this defense. They just had their way the entire night.
Well, the Ducks shut down the run, just absolutely shut down the run. And then when you shut down the run, then you can start putting pressure on the quarterback because he's going to start to throw the ball. Giles was not a very effective quarterback coming in, I think 56% or something like that. So you knew that if you could get any pressure on him at all, that his throws would be a little bit off. Now, he came in with a number of interceptions and never threw the ball away, but he got sacked a ton. So the defensive line did a spectacular job of keeping him contained in the cage, taking him down, not letting him make throws. The secondary, the back end did their job. Oregon's defense was about as complete yesterday as I think I've seen them in a while.
And I think that's one thing that surprised me a little bit was the lack of takeaways in this game. I mean, we knew that I think Aiden Childs had 6 touchdowns and 8 interceptions coming into this game, and Oregon turned him over once. So Granted, it was a very important turnover right on the goal line to stop them from scoring on the first drive. But I was a little bit surprised. Not that it was a bad thing. I mean, the defense played great. They won the game. They did what they needed. I was just surprised that we didn't have, 2 to 3 takeaways and interception, because Aiden Giles has proven this year that he's prone to get rid of the ball when he can.
Yeah, I think what I saw him do last night when he did have pressure on him, instead of just getting rid of the ball and trying to make a play, I think those interceptions were in his head from earlier in the season, his first few games. I think he didn't do that. And that's why there weren't interceptions. Coming up to this game, when he felt pressure, he'd launch the ball and probably wasn't in the right place. I think Friday night, when he got that pressure, he ate it, went down, and those were the sacks. So I think that young man is learning on the go. Don't just throw the ball away, take the sack and live for another day.
What I also did really like to see from this defense is that they've struggled before, not this year necessarily, but in past years with mobile quarterbacks and kind of letting them get out of the pocket. And, we've seen Cam Ward hurt this team before like that. I thought Aiden Giles might have a chance to do that last night, but they did really well against him. There was a couple times he got out and scrambled a little bit, but overall he had, I Bleav, 29 net rushing yards, 50 gross rushing yards, but you take out the sack yardage from that. So I thought they did really well kind of containing him. That gave me a little bit of hope for this defense, that it's growing in that aspect.
Well, they really played smart, really smart football. They stayed in their lanes. They kept their heads up. They really shook, those blockers. Jordan Birch was phenomenal. He shows his speed. He gets rid and sheds a block, and then knows where the quarterback is, and then closes on him. We saw him do that last night. Tatum Tuioti did it. I'm looking at Mateo Ungalele. They just all closed the cage, set the edge, and did what they were coached to do. This is the first game I think they really did a very good job of containing and squeezing in Giles.
Speaking of these individual players, let's get into our 3 quack segment, where we highlight 3 players from each game, kind of for their performance. I'll start out with, someone you just mentioned, Jordan Birch. I think this was by far his best game as a Duck, and that comes after last week, where I think he had his best game as a Duck against UCLA. 2.5 sacks, 4 tackles. He's up to a career high of 5 sacks already this season. He is showing out to be, one of those classic Oregon edge rushers that we've seen. Kayvon was that, DeForest Buckner, Eric Armstead, these pass rushers that Oregon has kind of churned out and put in the NFL. It seems like Jordan Birch is going to be the next guy to do that. He's stepping up, and he's, arguably the best player on the defense, maybe even the best player on the entire roster right now.
Yeah, I think a lot of that has to do with their practice regimen and their communication. They're just getting better along the defensive line. They seem to know what each other are doing. The scheme that has been put together benefits their strengths. I think Derek Harmon was really important last night. Derek Harmon occupies a couple of guys, and that makes the guys around him better. Derek Harmon is a really key for me too. And I mentioned Tatum Tuioti and even Mayo, Ungalele, and they just all work together better, I thought, in this game than in any other game. They didn't overcommit. They didn't not set the edge. They didn't do everything together. So you're like Jordan Birch. Justin Jacobs, for me, I thought was really important in this ball game. He all of a sudden showed up and was where he needed to be. It was part of, it's almost hard for me to pick 3 because the defense, I thought, played so well together. Let me knock my microphone over. I think they played so well together and communicated and knew where each other were. Not a lot of big explosion plays last night because they were in the right place.
Yeah, it was really great. I'm glad you brought up Justin. He wasn't on my list, but I did notice watching him throughout the game last night, and I'm excited to watch him my rewatch later today. He showed up when we'd been kind of waiting for him to show up all season. He hasn't been playing quite as many snaps as I expected early in the season, which I'm not sure why. Whether it's scheme, it's fit, it's injury. I don't know what it is, but he came out last night and I thought played really well. And before I go on to my second one, you mentioned Derek Harmon. He's the classic guy, I think, that, when you watch the game, you see how disruptive he is and how dominant of a force he is. Then you look at the stat sheet and it's like, he really didn't do much. He had 1 sack last night, I think 1 tackle. But it's like that. It shows the classic example of kind of what Brandon Dorlus did with this team. Like, he's not going to fill a stat sheet, but if you watch the tape, he is one of the best players on the field. And the offensive line has to just attribute so much attention to him each play.
Yeah, what those guys do for Caldwell, there are times when you're not going to see his numbers on a stat sheet, but he's the guy that pushed the quarterback, made him turn into Jordan Burch. I mean,
Yeah.
so he won't credit for that tackle or for that sack, but he's the guy really that sort of made it happen with his rush on the quarterback and forced him into another Duck player. So they're all complementing each other so well right now this season.
Yeah, they're really playing as a unit, which is fun to see. I'm going to take it over to the offensive side of the ball. You got to start with Jordan James. I mean, good Lord, what a game from this kid. Like I said, 166 total rushing yards in the game, 151 in the first half, a touchdown to go with it. Some really, really long runs. I mean, it feels like he's been having a good season so far, like a classic season from Jordan James, what you expected. That was all just an appetizer for what the main entree was last night. It was so much fun to watch him play and lower his shoulder and kind of bring the contact to defenders. He was a lot of fun to watch.
It seemed to come into that game with a different attitude.
Yeah.
Jorgie and I have talked about it in previous games where the offensive line would open a hole and maybe a linebacker would reach out and get him by the ankle or the leg with an arm whip or tackle, and he'd go down. And we would comment, gosh, if you lift the legs up, power through that tackle, and you've got a 40, 50-yard run or more. He hadn't been doing that. In this game, he was doing that. He ran through some tackles. He ran over a linebacker. It might have been a safety. He ran with a whole lot more energy and purpose, and that's what he's capable of. And if he does that the rest of the year, he's going to be a load for teams to handle. It was an impressive performance for him.
Yeah. Do you have any other offensive guys or any guys that stand out to you? I've got a couple more, but I'm curious who you have.
Yeah, Tez is obviously one of those. Hard to overlook that. But I'm going to talk about Terrence Ferguson and Patrick Herbert.
Okay.
And it's part of the game that in years past used to be, and I think it was Scott Frost who I first heard this from, no block, no rock.
Yep.
Okay? You're not going to block downfield to help your teammates. We're not going to throw you the ball. Well, Ferguson and particularly Patrick Herbert are unsung heroes of the big plays to the wide receivers on the outside or a running back that gets the edge. If you really watch and focus on those guys in a game, you're going to see them just making plays. Ferguson not only got a big block, it sprung Dillon for a touchdown on the right side of the end zone, but the guy that he blocked, he took him out so solidly, the guy got up, didn't like it, and got a personal foul for it. So
tack on 15.
Tack on 15. So the two tight ends I thought were spectacular in what they did and do every week.
Well, and then you see Ferguson get that tight end screen, which beautiful play design. It takes it for 62 yards up the right side. It's like, all right, this is a man of many talents. He's a lot of fun to watch play.
Yeah, I thought he was going to go out of bounds, and when he got hit once, I thought he was going out. And so that was not a great call for me because I was anticipating him getting tackled. So Ferguson on the sideline stepped. No, he didn't step out. Yep. He got hit. No, he didn't get hit. Oh, he's still going. So it was a great run.
You should know by now with him. Never count him out.
Oh, I know.
Never count him
out. No.
You mentioned him. We have to highlight Tez Johnson. Another incredible game. I feel he's just doing this every week now. 10 catches, 84 yards, and a touchdown. What I thought was completely wild is, so last year, Tez broke the Oregon Ducks single season completion record with 86 catches. Through 5 games, he already has 43 catches and is on pace for 103 catches in the regular season. That's not even to mention if they go to, the Big Ten championship game or a potential bowl game or a playoff game or multiple playoff games. It's incredible the volume that he's getting in this offense. And it's, there was questions coming into this year. How would he fare without Bo Nix, his adopted brother, throwing him the ball? Better, I think, because he's clearly Dylan Gabriel's top option.
Well, he's matured. He's another year older. He's another year better. And we talked to him in the postgame show last night, and something he told us, which was, it's not everybody can do this. It's a gift. All right. He said when he gets that ball either on a punt return or on a catch, he's not looking at the guy in front of him that's going to tackle him. He's not looking at the second guy that's maybe going to get to him. He's looking beyond to the third guy, who is probably the guy that's going to cause him the most problem. Because he says, I know I can make first 2 guys miss. So they're not even part of the game. So he makes first game miss. The second guy, he'll make them miss. And then he's ready for that third guy, knowing that he may get popped pretty hard. So he's ready to take that hit unless that guy doesn't get to him. He said his peripheral vision allows him to see what's coming before it does get there. And there are not a lot of people who can anticipate ahead to that degree and prepare themselves for what could be a big play. And his quick ability to stop and spin he's special. He's special.
Yeah, his ability to move with the ball in his hands in open space, and not even in open space. I mean, he can be in a phone booth and make a guy miss, like you're saying. It's just, it's so fun to see
Yeah,
him with the
he can go
ball.
60 yards in a phone booth. I mean,
Yeah, absolutely. Before we move on, I also want to highlight Trayshawn Holden, not for his 4 catches and 63 yards, but for that just incredible catch he made while laying on his backside that he bobbled up in the air. Of course, we were all kind of worried about Dylan Gabriel after suffering that hit on the throw, but
yeah,
once it became clear that Dylan Gabriel was probably going to be okay, we all went back to that catch. It was like, oh my gosh, this was
yeah.
a fantastic play.
Great players make plays like that
Mhm.
because it's just instinct, and to know that you're wide open. I mean, there's nobody near him. He's going to score. Just catch the ball, turn and run to the touchdown.
Mhm.
And then as he turns, his ankle catches, he goes down, and he has the presence of mind and the focus to be able to stay looking at that ball,
Mhm.
watch it, and as it goes, reach up, stop it, drop it down to himself, bobble it, and catch it. It's just you can't. I don't think you can coach that kind of
Mhm.
talent. That's stuff that just has to be there. So the level of concentration on a play that seems to be done wasn't, because he was able to concentrate and follow through. That was a spectacular play.
I could try to do that same thing 500 times and not once even come close to, to doing the same thing from the
I might
route
do
to
it.
the trick.
Yeah,
Yeah.
maybe a Nerf ball, in my
Oh
living
yeah.
room, but that's it.
Yeah, not with those stakes. Not with people
No.
trying to take your head off too. All right, let's move on. I've got a question for you, and this
Yeah.
is where we could talk about Dylan Gabriel a little bit. Obviously, fans were a little bit frustrated and I would say concerned about, some of the mistakes that he's made. In the past 2 games, he's got 3 interceptions in the red zone. I mean, 2 of them came on the 1 yard line, one of them came in the end zone. I'm curious about this. I was talking with some of my, the other beat reporters last night after the game. Is it fair to be concerned, or are Oregon fans a little bit spoiled by what we've seen from Bo Nix? Like, if I know it's a little bit of both, like most things are, but if you had to put a percentage on that, how much of this is Oregon fans are spoiled from a quarterback for 2 years that made practically zero mistakes to actually, yeah, this is something that we need to watch going forward?
Well, I think we're spoiled. I'm spoiled. I mean, we forget the fact that coming into this game, he was leading the nation in passing efficiency, 81%. That was not a mistake. He's that good. Now, if you think that you're going to go through a season and not make a mistake or two along the way, it's unrealistic. It's just not realistic. You see guys in the pros do it. You see guys do it everywhere. You have that game or that period of time when you're just not sharp, but he knew it. He knows it. Oregon's defense was up to the task and helped him out. But I'm not worried about Dylan Gabriel. I mean, gosh, let him make a mistake or two. Remember, though, what he's already accomplished. 84% efficiency at one time, 81% coming to the game, best in the nation. That's who he is. He's smart. He's been around. He knows what he did, what he didn't do right. And he's not going to do that again or very often. Don't expect him to go the rest of the season without a pick. It's going to happen. The best do it.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I liked what I asked Dan Lanning about that last night. If a veteran player like this, what do you say to him after that? Do you pull him over on the sideline? Do you kind of let him be like a pitcher that just needs to work through some things? Like, what
Yeah.
does he do? And he said, I talked to him, but this is a learning moment for him, and this is a place for him to grow, as all of these things are. So yeah, I don't think
Yeah.
that fans should be too concerned.
No, I
Maybe
really
they run it a little bit more from the 1 yard line than pass it, but that's something that Will Stein and Dylan Gabriel can figure out.
Yeah, there was some pretty interesting formations last night.
That was a lot of fun, man. I
It was
I
a lot of
enjoyed
fun.
I enjoyed seeing Josh Carnley split out at tight end at one point.
Yeah,
That was great.
yeah.
All right, so we've got Ohio State now. The Ohio State week is now here. We
Finally.
will see if ESPN's College Game Day sets up shop in Eugene. I would not at all be surprised. I know there's some other big games coming, but we'll see. That will probably be announced later today or maybe early tomorrow. If game day does come, it would be the 31st time they have ever featured an Oregon game.
Wow.
And the 12th time they've been in Eugene. Oregon is 18-12 all time when on game day and 8-3 at home. This is going to be a great, great game. We've had this circled on the calendar for months now. What are you looking forward to the most?
Well, I guess I'm looking forward most to seeing Ohio State up close and personal. I mean, they're a very, very good football team. They're big, they're fast in every position. They do things right. They don't make a lot of mistakes. And so far, they've proven to be the best football team on the field in every game. Oregon is in that mold as well. So when you get two teams of that caliber who are going to meet, I'm glad it's at Oregon. I'm glad the Autzen crowd is going to help out. But I'm curious to see who can control the line of scrimmage. That's to me two good quarterbacks, two running games. But the defenses for these two teams, I want to see the trenches, and I want to see them early. The other big thing I don't want to see is turnovers. You cannot turn the ball over to an Ohio State team the way you did a Michigan State team and not pay the price for it. If you give Ohio State an extra possession, they're going to utilize that. And if you like Michigan State getting in the red zone, if you can take one of those possessions away from Ohio State, I think to me that's the key in the game. Ball control, turnovers, miscues, self-inflicted miscues, because I think they're both going to play really, really well on both sides of the ball. If you don't shoot yourself in the foot with a bad mistake, I think this is going to be a great game.
I think it will be too. I was a little bit surprised to see I opened up the BetMGM betting odds earlier today. Ohio State favored by 3. That's not a big surprise. I mean, they are the number 2 or number 3 team in the nation, but which rankings you want to look at. The over and under set at 56.5. I was surprised. That seems a little bit high for me because these are two of the best defenses in the nation. I think this is going to be more of a low scoring game, like a 21-17 game instead of your 35-31 shootout. But that's just me.
No, I agree with you. I don't think there's going to be a lot of explosion plays in this game. I don't think either team gets many of those. And quite often, that's when you have a high-scoring game. These teams are going to have to work it out going down the field. Dink and duck, maybe get a little 15, 20-yard shot over the middle or a good run. But I don't think you're going to see 60, 70-yard pass plays. I mean, Ohio State has the capability to do it. Oregon can defend it. Same thing. Oregon has the capability to do it, but Ohio State can defend it. So I look for a lower scoring game as well. I think it's going to be Jorgie used to call it a slobber knocker.
Sounds like Jorgie. You touched on it a little bit. Do you have remaining concerns about this team going into this game? Things that you just want to see more of, see better of?
Not really on the offensive side of the ball. I don't. On the defense, obviously, I don't. The only thing I look for in that is to continue to build depth. Oregon has been very fortunate to keep away from any serious injuries that have taken guys out for a length of time. But they can continue to do that. That's the best case scenario. But developing depth and get a few more guys that when you get a tough game coming up like this Ohio State game, there's going to be some banging going on. So you need to rotate some guys in. So the Ducks need to continue to develop depth to be able to bring guys in and give guys a break. That's the only thing I hope continues to develop.
The one thing that I think about, and I was thinking about this a lot when I was leaving Autzen last night, one thing I'm kind of concerned about, and it's not a major concern, Oregon just hasn't proven to me yet that they can play a mistake-free game for an entire 4 quarters. So far, they've gotten away from it because, attribute that a little bit to the level of competition, all the respect to the teams they've played, and credit to the defense. Of course, they've been incredible, but, they haven't played 4 quarters of clean football where there's been no drives where you're like, oh, this could have gone better. They should have done that. Shouldn't have made that mistake. I just don't know if you can beat Ohio State with as many mistakes as we've seen from the Ducks so far. I'm not by any means writing them off and saying they can't win this game. I just haven't seen it yet. I think that they have to step up and do a lot more than what we've seen so far. This team that we've seen over the past couple of weeks, I think makes a little too many mistakes in crucial areas. Those red zone turnovers. Yeah. You can't have that against Ohio State. They will, they're not going to punt the ball like Michigan State did last night after that turnover. So, that's one thing I want to see. And I think we absolutely can. I'm by no means, again, picking against the Ducks in this game yet. I have not decided how I think this game is going to go. I know it's going to be a good one. I'm not surprised Ohio State is favored, but I just, there's still too many mistakes for my liking, but it's still early in the season. We've played 5 games.
Yeah, in the way college football is today, in the style of play, wide open, fast, trickeration, all the things that go on, I don't know if you're going to find a college football team in the top 10 today that can say we've played 4 perfect quarters. It just doesn't happen anymore. I mean, Ohio State beat Michigan State, I think 37-7. In that Ohio State game, they made a few mistakes. I mean, every team now is making mistakes because of the style of football play and the quality of the athletes. So you're forced to make mistakes when the defense, if you're an offense, you're going to make some mistakes on defense because the defense is going to force that. On offense, you're going to get greedy and you're going to make a mistake. It's the way college football is played now. I think we see, Zach, more mistakes in college football are self-inflicted wounds because of the level of athleticism that they
Mhm.
can. I think they have an attitude of we can do more than we're really capable of. They believe in themselves more. I know it's like me. I get on a ladder. I'm going to get and paint the house. It's too high, but I know I can get up and paint that ladder. And I get up on the top, and then I drop the paint bucket because I can't get up and get on the ladder.
Yeah.
So it's kind of a bad analogy, I know, but
I liked it.
you're going to see both of these teams make mistakes that are forced by the other team. The team that capitalizes on those mistakes is going to have a huge advantage.
Well, and it's just look at the Georgia and Alabama game last week. The team that can make mistakes and bounce back and keep a level head and keep playing is,
Definitely.
going to stay in this game. And so far, we've seen Oregon do very well
Yeah.
in
Yeah.
that realm so far this year. They've made the mistakes, but they've had that next play mentality and bounce back. Dylan Gabriel had a really good game last night after throwing those 2 interceptions in the first half. So, I like their abilities there. And that's one thing that gives me confidence because you're right. It's not realistic to ask for 4 quarters of perfect football. I think we've seen this team do that once, maybe twice under Dan Lanning. I think back to the Utah game last year where they said, "Hey, that
Yeah.
was a 4-quarter complete game butt whooping." I think we all want to see that again, but it may be a little
Definitely.
bit unrealistic to ask for that, especially against Ohio State.
Yeah, when you get against those kind of teams, they're good for a reason. Oregon's good for a reason
Mhm.
because you make it tough on your opponent and you make them make miscues.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, let's wrap it up there. That's going to do it for us today. Thank you guys all for tuning in. Again, if you're watching this, go like and subscribe to the show, rate, review, all that stuff. It helps us grow our audience immensely. Jerry, thank you so much for coming on and breaking down this game with me. It was a lot of fun.
Zach, let's do this again. I'm anxious to talk to you about where we are another 2 or 3 weeks in the season. Just as excited then as we are now.
Absolutely. I look forward to it. I'll see you this week for one of the biggest games in Autzen Stadium
Oh,
history.
baby, it's going to be good. Hey, thanks for having me on.
Thanks, Jerry.